Hey everyone, welcome back to Dating and Donuts. My name's Aaron. I'm here with my friend and colleague Bryan Ventura. Today we're going to talk a little bit about managing competing priorities. But before we get into our talk today, I'll have Bryan tell us a little bit about himself.
Hey, thanks for welcoming me to the show, Aaron. Bryan Ventura, I'm the Director of Institutional Research and Planning at Cypress. I've been in the research field for since 2013, held every position in the research office. So I'm one of the homegrown kids that, finally made it to a dean director position. I'm just excited to be here. Work with a lot of great people. So
Awesome.
thanks for having me.
Reese, thanks for being here. So I wanted to jump right into the interview to really say, how do you manage competing priorities?
Well, that's a good one because there's always competing priorities and someone needs something yesterday and they found out about it today. And it's always when you have a project that's due for someone else. And so for me, when we get those sort of requests, it's always, what is the scope? How many people is it going to impact and who needs it and by when? And do I even have the capacity in the office? Both, me jumping into the weeds of it, as well as my analysts. If we can do it, then we'll try to put it on the docket. But if there's times where we can't, I told my analysts, if we can't do it, let's just be upfront. Let's just tell whomever's the requester, this is what we can give you. We can give you something to chew on. And then there's times where we ask questions back to buy us some time so we can really get a feel for what we have on our plates. So someone will send a request. We need this tomorrow. It's for a grant. It's $5 million or what have you. And it's like, well, please tell us a little bit more about it, right? So we'll ask questions or we'll ask, hey, can you get some feedback from someone else who might be able to chime in on the data details we need? So if there's time, then we'll buy ourselves some time by asking questions. In terms of actually getting the work done, if we can't do it, we can't do it. And I'll talk to my president, I'll talk to the folks involved. But I know I've been in those hard situations where someone asked and just wasn't possible. But I had a great backing from, VPs and the president to say, this could have been asked for earlier. Yeah, and I think if there's things that can be automated, then we'll spend the time automating them, right? And so, depending on the scope of it, if it's something ongoing, then if we can deliver it now, we'll let them know that we'll build something to make that process easier next time. But there's always something that comes up, and sometimes I say you always have to be upfront with the requester and then with your staff. I don't want to tax my staff to the point where they're unhappy, and I try to create an environment where they tell me, hey, I can't do this. That's okay, as long as we're on the same page.
That's cool. No, I think that's some really key points, especially looking into the two lenses, the capacity by which you can do it, and then also almost that consultation approach where, a lot of times someone will say, hey, I need to know the success of X, Y, and Z. And you're just like, I think you just need enrollment or utilization data or something like
Yeah.
that. Would this do, or would this report that we already have exist to support that? So I think going through those maybe iterative steps that may take a little longer actually gets the individual to where they want to be. And to go back to what I kind of mentioned just a second ago was, you talked on asking your staff and really creating that open environment helps really foster the not just support, but also the guidance and almost the culture around that. And, when you close the loop to say I can by this date or saying, it's not possible at this time really helps build credibility. So I think that's a great approach. Now, following down the same vein, I want to know, do you have any examples of competing priorities, maybe as a recent?
Of course, the 320 report was just due. And that's a big undertaking for our office. And this is the first year that our office actually got asked to do it. And so that to me was the priority given the deadline for the district and for the college. But I also had some requests from, some of our VPs and presidents about some data for student forums because we're trying to think about how to, re-engage students as we think about what college is looking like. And that's an important data piece. We had a retreat coming up and we needed to prepare some data and analyze some of the survey data we had. And so, my staff were working on other projects, and I did tell my president, I said, hey, I'm working on a couple of things that 320 is due, but I will get to this one. I will give me till this date, and 2 days later, I'll give you the data that you need. And I'll have the report. I'll have a conversation with you of what it's supposed to say, what it needs to say, what we're going to present at the retreat. And so just, I think the communication is key, as you said, letting everyone know where we can do something, where we can't, and the follow-up afterwards.
That's cool. That's a great example, especially I think a lot of us with all the recent changes in the regulations, asking for almost that grace period or almost building that like large buffer in between and saying like, hey, this is our sole focus on what we're working on right now. And sometimes that's what I've at least experienced myself as well, is that when someone's like, hey, I need this information, or hey, can you go to this playing event? Can you do this activity? Like, my team's focused on X, Y, and Z right now. Here's the implications of that. And as you just saying, like, just straight no. If you can give that detail like you did, and then it buys you some time typically and some understanding, which 90% of the time individuals hear that, they're like, oh, if that's what our pay as a college, go for it, or whatever it may be, or the impact it would be. So no, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think one of the earlier conversation is letting folks know that this is a deadline everyone knows about, right? And letting the leadership team know this is going to be a priority for our office. We're still learning, how to do this from a data standpoint and following up with other deans, schedulers, and all that. I think that went a long way in letting folks understand what we were doing and why we couldn't provide everything immediately that we usually do.
That's cool. That's a great approach. And so, as colleagues listening, or even peers that you have at work, what advice would you provide individuals that have competing priorities to help navigate that?
Yeah, I would say, support your staff. As the director or dean, we have a lot to do, and our staff have a lot to do. And communicating it in a way that's supportive of their capacity and their workload, I think is key, because then again, I think it builds that trust. And I've had a lot of great staff go beyond what's asked of them because of that, right? So they're like, appreciate you, being upfront with me and helping me work through some of the things. And I think that's helpful to understand the capacity, have an open line of communication, so then I can communicate what we can and can't do as an office, right? Because I don't want to be in a situation where we're putting out something or fulfilling a request that, we don't feel comfortable about. We're just doing it because, it's a rush job. And so create that culture within the office where there's communication, and then from the office to the broader campus, if there are times of priority, be it program review, 320 report, development of big plans like strategic plan or your ed master plan, I think communicating that through your committee structure and with your colleagues will let them know that you're not just trying to deny a request, you're not trying to push off the things that they're asking you, but you're really trying to do these major projects that are so critical to, our function as a college.
That's a great perspective. Now, thanks so much for sharing that. And so I got a bonus question. And
sure.
So last year it was, what was your favorite donut? But this year, as a follow-up to that, is what do you prefer more, coffee or tea?
Coffee all day long. I hate to admit this, but I'm at least a 3-cupper. So 1 in the morning when I go to the gym, 1 as I go to work, and then 1 in the afternoon. And then sometimes I'll have a espresso in the late evening. But coffee all day. I've tried to switch to tea, different kinds, your jasmine, your dragon fruit, anything, turmeric. Everyone has proposed everything. Vanilla almond, the fancy teas that come in a carton versus a bag, the loose leaf, the silk bag teas. But I'm back to coffee. I'm a single origin person. Coffee snob, if you will, but I'll drink it if I need it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for hanging out today, and
yeah,
look forward to talking about some more interesting topics in the future. Have a good
all right,
one.
thanks. You too.